What's up, everybody? This is Eric from Above My Pay Grade and Matt from Citizen Earn. We're back at you with our weekly get together. We were just talking before we hit record. It's early morning here in Colorado. And what day is it today? October 9th. But we were talking about Israel, and everyone has a perspective on Israel. And we're not going to bore you with our perspective on what's going on today, but we are specifically talking about the conspiracy theories, why people identify with Palestine, yada yada yada. And then we got to talking about conspiracy theories, and those are fairly rampant today. But Matt was saying that, I mean, you have an interesting perspective on conspiracy theories. So, number one, how would you, Matt? How would you define what you think conspiracy theory is, and is it a pejorative? Like, a lot of times people say, hey, you're a conspiracy theorist, therefore you believe things that aren't true. I think it's inferred. But a lot of people, maybe they're not conspiracy theorists, but they don't trust authorities. Specifically, they don't trust the government. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh boy, what a thing to start on. First and foremost, talking about Israel and Palestine, I think there's a podcast out there by Jason Harris called Jew Ought to Know. And I think it's at least the first, 20, 30 episodes are imperative for all folks, all people of the Western world to listen to, because it really kind of encapsulates the struggle between Israelis, or the Jews, and Palestinians, or the Arabs.
There's a lot of history there, way before current age. Yeah.
There's no way you and I can cover this real fast. Right. That podcast will kind of bring everybody up to speed. And he does a really good job of kind of telling both sides' stories. So he does it much better than I ever could. Now, to get back to conspiracy theories, because when something like this attack in Israel happens, so many people have so many opinions. I patently, or by definition, don't believe in conspiracy theories. The big reason that I don't is because I don't believe enough people can get together to organize something and stick together to pull it off. I think typically conspiracy theories are created by, now these days, keyboard warriors that don't have enough to do, and find patterns in places that the pattern exists, but it is misattributed. For a conspiracy theory to take place, you must have a conspiracy, right? So you must have a group of people that are aligned to undermine the government at some level and have a plan to execute undermining that. And more often than not, when you hear some of these conspiracy theories, they span years or decades, and they involve massive amounts of money and military and all of these forces. And I just don't think that anybody really is in a position to make that happen, aside maybe those who are in charge of the central world banks. And that includes some of the folks who are CEO or in leadership positions of a lot of the investment companies. What is that, like Blackthorn and
BlackRock?
BlackRock, that's right. And some of those, right? Those folks might be able to pull the strings, but, and here's the last part, on my opinion, with conspiracy theories, and that is that even if they're true, why are we wasting our time on them? Going back to the principles of the resources that we manage, time, money, and calories, that is so far above our pay grade, pardon the pun, with the podcast name, it doesn't matter. We don't have any effect there, right? They create the world, and we got to live in it.
So this will be fun, because there's some parts I disagree with you. I think there are So I guess we got to define conspiracy theory. And for my definition is the official narrative is different than what's really happening. So I agree with you that the more people you have in a project, the less likely that is that they're going to be able to conspire together and truth not to leak out.
Yeah.
So if we have hundreds of people or whatever involved, however, so thinking through that lens, I think, well, there could be a few people at the top who are giving one narrative, and everyone involved. I'll give you a couple examples. And we were talking about this before we started recording, so this is fun. So the reason I think this is an interesting topic is there's so many people out there, including myself, that can go too far on conspiracies. They say government's not telling the truth, therefore everything I've been ever told is a lie. It's probably not true, right? But um, at the same point, you should not lose that muscle of skepticism.
Yeah, and critical
So
thinking.
yeah, critical thinking. So if it doesn't pass logic,
The sniff test.
yeah, the sniff test. I'll give you an example that we were talking about before we started recording. Not really having an opinion. We're both being in the military. We get jabbed with all kinds of stuff, right? Go through a conga line of jabs when we go to basic training.
All kinds
So
of vaccines.
yeah, but by definition, if you join the military, you really can't be anti-vax. So, but then the COVID vaccine, and then all of a sudden it became political. Okay, great. I try not to. I'm susceptible to it just like everybody else. But just because I have a political leaning, therefore the other side, whatever they're saying, is wrong. Okay, that's not necessarily true. But one of the things I asked myself at the beginning was, hey, I already had COVID. So if I already had COVID, why do I need the vaccine? Simple question, because that's what I've been told my entire life. Like if you've already had something, typically that is a more durable immunity than a vaccine. I didn't know if it was true for COVID. But the answer I got was shut up and get the jab. That's when I started to question, like, what is going on here? And then everybody and their brother who was trying to think critically about this, um, if you tell somebody, and this is the conspiracy part, right?
And that's when the conspiracy theory started,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. So because of that, therefore, there has to be millions of people involved in trying to kill you. That's not necessarily true. However, I think the conspiracy could be a couple people who rush something potentially because of monetary reasons, and because the government, human beings are herd animals to some degree. So imagine you're a doctor who's swimming in a school of fish, and the whole school of fish is saying, "Hey guys, get this, and it's going to save your life." And if you decide to swim away from that school of fish and say, "Hey guys, this is actually kind of dangerous," or whatever you want to say against the official narrative, if you're wrong, your career's over. But if you're wrong swimming with the entire school of fish, no one's career is over. It's just a whole faux pas of the entire medical industry, right? So I'm sure there was plenty of people in that school of fish who just didn't want to step out of line because maybe they didn't believe it, but they didn't want to risk their career on when the whole medical industry was pushing this. So that's kind of how I think about conspiracy theories half the time. Is it's not this cabal of people. It's an incentive motivated thing. And maybe there is a cabal of 2 or 3 people who made a decision. And then down the line, people see what the motivation is and they go, I could lose my job if I speak up.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure.
I think, and this is something that I say a lot as an immigrant, having learned English as a second language. I think a lot of times people need to go back to, language in the dictionary and like definitions. I'm not sure if that's necessarily a conspiracy theory. I think people come up with conspiracy theories to explain away or make sense of government and bureaucratic inefficiencies and politics. I don't necessarily have a nice, easy term to wrap that up with. But to speak to COVID specifically, let's look at it from the leader's perspective. You have a new virus that you've never seen before, that your scientists have never seen before, that you know came out of an enemy state. And it's getting a lot of people into hospitals.
But remember, they were saying that was xenophobic, that it came out of an enemy state. So that adds to the theory.
And that's because of the economic relationship between the US and China, right? They didn't want to make China too mad. So you don't know. You know it's a danger, but you don't know. And you're in charge of protecting your population, right? So what are you going to do? You're probably going to go to the worst case scenario, and you're going to recommend the harshest controls. And that was the clampdowns and mask mandates and all of these things, and then this race to a vaccine. And those scientists started working on that vaccine. And what we didn't know at that point in time is how fast that virus mutated, the COVID virus, right? So we know now, with the benefit of hindsight, that the Alpha strain was quite lethal, that the Delta strain was quite lethal, and that the virus, I can't remember exactly, but I do remember that the virus mutated an order of magnitude faster than the regular SARS-2 family of flu-like viruses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you definitely have a human engineering component to it, where they're seeing this virus mutating so fast, it can't be natural. So from a leadership perspective, what do you do with that? Having recommended all of these controls to try to save people, because that's your job as a leader, you've got a lot of stuff riding on the line. You've got your reputation, you've got government resources. And so I think it's easy for the sunk cost fallacy to get ingrained, because we've put all this effort in. We have to keep putting this effort in to save face, to justify our actions, etc., etc. And so by the time you get to 10, 17, 20 mutations down the road, COVID, as any virus or biological agent, as it mutates from generation to generation, usually trades lethality for infectability. Its ability.
We just made it up. I like it.
Its ability to jump from host to host goes up, and its lethality goes
transmissibility
down. There we go.
$10 word. Really smart guy over here.
So, because if a virus kills its host too fast, then it doesn't have enough time to transmit to the next host, right? So it mutates to be less lethal, so that it has more time to propagate. So as the mutations go from generation to generation, the virus is outstripping the medical industry's ability to build a vaccine for it. So when we started all of this, the vaccine that they were designing made sense because of the lethality of the virus. Because it mutated so quickly, we couldn't keep up. So we had to get new and new vaccines. I just spent 7 minutes talking about that. Do you think that the average American would listen to all of that? They just want to know whether they need to get jabbed or not.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. But the soundbite was, and this is why I can see how somebody would come to hey, we got to do the safest thing possible. And because of that, you can make a lot of huge mistakes as a government. And the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The road to authoritarianism is paved with good intentions, and all this kind of stuff. But then it was I think this banality of evil, where people were maybe thinking, well, the expert said that it's 100% effective, stops transmissibility, and they're thinking it's kind of like the smallpox vaccine, right? Where I don't know anybody who had smallpox, so and everyone gets the smallpox vaccine. But then people started getting it again, and whatever scientific reason, they don't care.
And that's where you're going to see that sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah.
So I think COVID and conspiracy theory, or using COVID as an example for conspiracy theories, is that people, humanity, just the citizens, are very quick to judge. Monday morning quarterback, or what's that phrase?
Yeah,
where you're judging somebody like after the fact, right? And they're very quick to put people in a corner or classify them in a certain way without empathizing, number one, with the role and what they have to do, and then tempering that with knowing how technology works. And sound bites and attention spans having reduced. How do you communicate what I just said in a soundbite? You don't. You have to have people's attention for a while. And I think maybe they could have done better by simply saying, everybody, listen up. We don't really know what this thing is. It could be the apocalypse. It could be a flu vaccine. We're not willing to gamble on millions of lives to find out which one it is. So we're going to be careful. We're probably going to mess up because we're moving very quickly. Had they said that, I think a lot of people wouldn't see the conspiracy theory, but they have to look strong because of the political side. So they have to come out with an authoritative opinion, and then people are going to hang them with that authoritative opinion, right?
Well, if the authoritative opinion, the one thing I would add to that, I agree with everything you said, except for, well, I agree with this too, but if the authoritative opinion, here's why people judge government. If my authoritative opinion, because I'm in government, is to abolish First Amendment rights for some reason, that's when people start to question, like, what's going on here, folks? Because this isn't like bumbling around in the dark. This seems very coordinated, and mistakes are made, lots of them. And it appears, here's another thing as far as conspiracy goes. People in government ain't smart, folks. A lot of people realize that. Some people are in government, but
people kind of in general aren't smart. Some
of
them are in
I mean, look at us.
We're
two idiots talking on the internet. Yeah. But like, I know I'm too dumb to control millions of people, and to be able to take all the nuance of their life and go, hey guys, this is how you should run your life. Lock down your house, do this and that. Unfortunately, and not everyone in government is smart enough to realize how dumb they are, right? Yeah. So when you come out with an authoritative statement like, you will do X, you cannot do Y, that's when people start to go, hey, like, I understand mistakes can be made, but when you force a moral position or a health decision, right, on individuals because of your fear or desire to control, or desire, maybe it's even a totally, let's just say, innocent desire to help people. That's what you're doing. At least, at the very least, right, you should be able to admit you don't know what you don't know. Meaning, you don't know long-term effects of X, Y, and Z. They also didn't know the long-term effects of COVID. They don't know the long-term effects of lockdown. They don't, all this kind of stuff. But yet, they make rubber stamp decisions instead of letting it happen. And let me make the decision, right?
And I think, like with most things in life, the problem comes with like a communication and a lack of grace. I guess that just leads back to everybody's looking to judge and be angry at something. I guess what I should also share is that, from a personal perspective, for my extended family back in South Africa, we had 36 family members die from COVID during that time early on. And I didn't really know any of them. They were just names on a tree,
Sure.
on a family tree. But it goes to show you kind of the toll that you're not going to get through a government agency report, because there isn't enough government left in that country to be able to report on that type of situation, right? So we heard it through family channels, and that's kind of like a comparison on what happened with that virus in a first world country with proper medical care versus a country that didn't have that stuff. So everybody's very quick, and maybe it's an egocentric perspective in America, I don't know. But they're very quick to just analyze the details in this petri dish, right? And the moment that you get a little bit more scope, you're like, okay, I see where the government or the officials or the people who are making the decisions made the wrong decisions, and they should be held accountable for that, because anybody in a position of leadership or responsibility needs to be held accountable for the decisions that they make. That's why we trust them, right? So there's no argument there. I'm not trying to say that they were okay. But also, I think we would, as a society, move closer to healing the divide if we changed our attitudes from finger pointing and judgment to understanding and learning and moving and finding commonality, so that the next time around we don't deepen the divide and tear each side further apart, but try to heal it. And like you said, if it's from the top down, the person who has the authority, they're not really respecting the person on the bottom, the yous and me's, right? So we got to move to a society where this person is empowering this person. The leader is empowering the individual, so that the yous and me's, the idiots on the ground, we can make the right call. And that the leadership can then trust us to make the right call. That's how you build a strong country. That's how we, the people, enact I, the individual, for the benefit of everybody, right?
But so do you think that there are sacred things that we should, in that vein, I agree with you. In that vein of giving grace, there are certain things you don't touch, right? Like the First Amendment. So
there should be, but some idiots are going to go for it anyway.
So that's one of the unforgivable things to me. It's like, hey, I have a perspective. I'm trying to keep people safe here, folks. So what we need to do is just doing a little bit of airdropping with drones here in America, that's the kind of stuff like, hey guys,
lithium.
Yeah. If we take away somebody's Fourth Amendment, First Amendment rights, and we might even agree, we might think they're a really bad person. That's when it starts to get real sketchy, right? When you're like, hey, I was doing it for the greater good. Well, and everything's for the greater good, right? Everything appears to be for the greater good.
Sell it to you that way. And that's
I often tell people, like, I don't think Hitler was sitting in his bunker, like petting his hairless cat and going, I'm the most evil man alive. Like, that's the thing people don't understand. And oftentimes I don't think about these people are people that may disagree with you think they're holy. They are doing something righteous in their own mind.
That's right. That's where that healthy skepticism that you mentioned earlier, that critical thinking, is so important. And I think it's why the founding fathers wrote the Constitution, starting with we the people. It is each person's job to use the First Amendment to get to the information, to be informed, to know what's going on with all of the issues, so that their decision process can help inform the entire cultural opinion on something. That's how
But you can't be informed without First Amendment, right? Like if I'm shutting down, if I'm taking a doctor who might have a differing opinion and threatening their medical license because they're trying to kill people, according to the government. Hence the conspiracy theories of like, hey, there's something else going on here because I would like to hear. I would like to be informed. But if there's only one narrative, because the government says there's only one narrative allowed, I don't trust my government because they don't trust me to use my critical thinking.
Yeah, and that was their fatal mistake, right? Is saying there's only one way and we all have to march in this direction because that smells like authoritarianism. And we're not a country, like we're a country designed to resist authoritarianism, right?
In theory. I think
we'll
a lot of people like one of the things I've thought about a lot is like the arc of history. It's like what motivates people to get out of authoritarianism. It's when it gets bad. It's not when it first starts. Because remember, you know, Hitler was democratically elected. He's everyone's favorite. But Mussolini, Lenin, Stalin, people loved Lenin, right? Initially. Certain people did, at least. And it's when the lie can't persist. And this is why I talk about economics so often, is because I do think people actually want safety. And I think it was Benjamin Franklin. It's like, those who sacrifice freedom for safety will have neither. It's because it does work. Because if you have a legacy of freedom, if for a short snippet in time, you sacrifice your freedom for safety, and then you do it again, and you do it again. Maybe it's because there's an outside enemy or an inside enemy, whatever. You don't know. But this needs to happen according to the government. Eventually, as those freedoms erode away, I can't even give you safety anymore. I can't give you the bread and circuses anymore because money printing and all this kind of stuff buys you so much time. And I think we're at the tail end of that time where government can say, don't worry, I know this should be your responsibility. We'll take it on. We'll do the school thing. We'll do your retirement thing.
Where they can buy you.
Yeah. But they can't buy you if they can't, like, if your average person doesn't believe in the dollar, let's say it's hyperinflation. The same thing happened in Germany, where they go, government hands you all these paper currency units, and they use it as kindling for fire because it can't buy you anything, and government can't print bread, and they can't print circuses, unfortunately. So I think the human beings want that, and then there's this legacy, like, you know, I had great grandparents who were alive during the Great Depression. And I remember my mom saying something about them and the way they hoarded food.
Yeah.
And then there's this legacy, you know, if that's the way they lived, and then they went off to World War II, and then they tell their children that story. And then their grandchildren, you know, the boomers, don't really remember it that much. So that lesson has to be retaught over and over again. And it usually, unfortunately, involves pain.
That's the thing. You have hit on so many important things here that I have to punctuate. Number one, the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments are enumerations of natural rights. So the First Amendment doesn't guarantee our access to information. It enumerates the fact that human beings have the right to stand in opposition to something that they don't believe in, they don't support, and that they will find the information regardless of whether the government wants them to or not. Just like the Second Amendment enumerates the fact that any living thing has the right to defend itself against oppression. Whether those laws are, or whether those amendments are on the books or not, we're still going to do that. We're just going to do them illegally if we no longer have the amendments. Just because something is illegal doesn't mean it is moral or right. So that's how the Founding Fathers wrote the Bill of Rights, to say, you have these, and we think it's worth reminding everybody and putting them on an official document so that people don't forget them, which leads me to my next point, and which hits on your point of the stories and the generation telling stories. People don't read enough history. We have 10,000 years of documented human history. That's what the term history defines. Anything prior to documented human history is prehistory, right? So by definition, we have all of this history that we can read and learn from. And experience other people's mistakes vicariously without feeling the consequences of those mistakes. So we need to get back to reading history and learning those lessons vicariously through the books rather than having to enact them and feel the pain again. And the third thing that you mentioned was that pain. People aren't familiar with pain. They have so little pain in their lives that they don't know how bad it can get, and they don't have a frame of reference of how bad it can get. And as a result, what they currently feel as pain isn't really pain. It's just a little bit of discomfort. But because their frame of reference doesn't allow them to understand how little pain they have, they want to eliminate even that little bit of pain, and they're willing to trade away almost anything to have no pain. Here's the secret to life. Life without pain is meaningless. Pain creates the frame of reference of how bad it can be, and that lends to the frame of reference or the understanding of how good life is without pain. We can create that and a high quality of life for every single individual in the world, at least the United States, if we artificially induce pain. And the quickest, easiest, most beneficial way to induce pain is through physical training, working out, PTing, whatever you want to call it, right? If you are, for 30 minutes, somebody is driving you, maybe that somebody could be yourself, and you have angry music or harsh music or whatever, and you're feeling like you're gonna die. Not only are you getting more fit, you're daily, or however often you work out, creating the frame of reference of how much it can suck. And therefore being appreciative of how much the rest of your day or the rest of your life doesn't suck, right? And if we temper that with history and knowledge of the mistakes of those who've come before us, at least that's the model, that's the idea, that's how it's supposed to flow.
Yeah. We're going to keep these shorter. That's a good place to wrap up. We're going to try to keep these 30 minutes or so. And we're going to wrap up this one, but and continue it next week because I have a lot more things to say. But yeah, I think
sorry for the ramble.
Oh no, dude, I agree with you. I just always am thinking if you were talking to 100 people, you just connected with maybe one or two of them. And unfortunately, people, when we're talking about pain, it has to be like there are certain motivated people that want to do what you're talking about. And then there's people that will say, no, my life is meant for air conditioning and all this kind of stuff. And then the pain has to be forced on them to where they have to take a fork in the road, continue path A or go down path B. But if you keep continuing down path A, you're going to have a heart attack, or in a government perspective, you're going to have authoritarianism. Unfortunately, that's what I guess I'm trying to figure out is, has anybody ever in history woken up like a society where they're like, hey, we're going down the wrong path here. Maybe we should take a left. Or does it always just this ebb and flow? Authoritarianism. We don't like that. Back to freedom. Okay, things get good again. Back to authoritarianism. That's what I'm trying to figure out, because history tells me that just cycle happens over and over and over again.
Well, I'll tell you, that cycle very rarely is terminated or influenced by the will of a group of people. It's usually about resources. We should select this for our next discussion in the human condition, and essentially Jared Diamond's Guns, Germs, and Steel and his trilogy. So I have to say one last thing, and that is that I'm not smart. I really am a dum-dum. My younger brother always says that I don't have an original thought in my head. What I do and what my talent is to consume other minds' publications, their books, that are much brighter than me, that have put in the research and the effort, and I just make the contacts. So I link things together. I always try to cite my sources. So we didn't do a whole lot of sources this time around, but just know it's not me, it's the books I read. So anybody can do this. Just read books.
Love it, dude. All right, folks. Well, thanks for tuning in to this week's rambling about current events / conspiracy theories / whatever comes to mind. And we're going to do this again next Monday. So make sure you tune in, Matt. from Citizen Earned. Thanks for coming back on. Again, we're going to do this next Monday. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Thanks, dude.